So, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to yet another video on the Freak Flyers YouTube channel. And today, we're going to be doing top 10 skydiving hacks. So without further ado, let's get started. Hack number 1 is have an extra pull-up cord on your rig. This is useful for a whole number of reasons. First, because the pull-up cord that you normally use, you can lose it for some reason. Maybe you borrow it to someone and they take it and you lose them, you never see it again. But also because if you land off, it's good to have a pull-up cord for you to be able to either pack your rig, or even if you can't pack your rig, you can try to bundle it up all in the container and even tie it up with the pull-up cord just to make it a little bit neater, and so you can walk back a little bit easier. The same thought, you can try and have one pull-up cord in some flap that's accessible when you're packing. Then you can also have next to where you put your reserve repack card a little bit of money, so that in case you land off, you want to give someone a ride. If you're asking for a ride in a sketchy place where maybe, not sketchy people pass that with their car, but they don't stop because you might be sketchy. If you hold up a little like $20 or €20 bill and they see you with money like, hey, can you help me? Maybe they'll help you. And you can give them a little bit of money for them to drive you back to the airfield. I know I've done it a few times, but I've never paid anyone. Number 2, buy your instructors, coach, packers a beer and take that opportunity to start up a conversation. Buying a beer to someone that's very experienced, at least more experienced than you, is always a good way to make them like you. But that's not it. It's basically money that you're wasting. If you're going to be spending the $1 on the beer, or however much a beer costs in America, but €1.50 in a beer, you might as well get €1.50 of information back. So capitalize on your own gratitude by finding an instructor or coach that you like, even if you don't like them. Buy them a beer, and the time that it takes for them to get the beer served and pound the beer down, even if they're on the rush to go home or they're going home right after, you can still strike up a little bit of a conversation. Of course, don't be annoying to anyone, but you can start a little conversation. Maybe you have some questions about things you're doing or things that you see them doing that you want to know a little more about. It's always nice. You can always learn something from other people, even if they're less experienced than you. They still have a different view of the world, and they're maybe better than you at certain things. I know I've had amazing conversations in the bar where people try to strike up conversations with me, and in the meantime, I found out people have crazy hobbies that they're very experienced in, just like I have some experience in skydiving, and we share knowledge. And you will see that if you're base jumping, a lot of urban exploring and climbing, alpine stuff translates a lot in between these outdoor sports. If you're doing a lot of free fly, you'll see that some of the dancing and acrobatic moves that you see on some ballet and everything can also translate to skydiving freestyle. And training methods for body intensive sports can also translate maybe to swooping. I'm just giving you some examples off the top of my head of reasons why it's good to just pay a beer to that guy. Maybe he has something to tell me. And maybe if he's a little bit crazy, I know who to stay away from. Number 3, when taking your reserve for a repack, ask the rigger to let you do the emergency procedures, and if possible, for him to let you watch him pack. So it's actually, curiously, I've had this list written for a few months now of the hacks. I just haven't gotten around to it. But recently there's been a video circulating of a guy with a hard pull. And I've seen dozens of videos and people having hard pulls on reserves because they're on the ground, they try it out, and they feel like it's not as easy as pulling the parachute from the BOC, and they are surprised at how much force is required. The FAA says that you need to test your rig, and the pull force needs to be 22 pounds on the reserve handle. There's a million different factors to take into consideration when counting these 22 pounds of force, because even the way the 5-pound thread is set up, even the way the Velcro shears on some of the Skyhook and RSL equipped rigs, it can increase the pull force by 10 pounds easily, and 10 pounds plus 10 pounds plus on 22 is going to be 32 pounds. Is a big difference. So, I don't think that you should put a scale and perfectly pull 22 pounds if you're pulling on the handle. Maybe if you're directly pulling on the pin, yes, it should be 22 pounds with no extra, no, if you're not considering any extra added drag from the Velcros and whatnot. But there's also very real problems where scored pins can dig into grommets, to the reserve flap grommets, and they cause a lot of drag. Think of like if you look in with a microscope into a pin and you amplify it by billions of times bigger, like you make it billions of times bigger, the surface of a pin, if it's like smooth as if it was increased by millions of times, if it's smooth like a frozen lake, and let's say the surface of the pin is smooth like a frozen lake, and the surface of the grommet is also super smooth like a frozen lake, and you press them into each other, even with a lot of force from the spring and the tight loop, they will slide against each other with some force, but way less than if you increase it by a million times, and both of them, the grommet or the pin, look like mountains. You can imagine mountains dragging into each other, they don't really drag too well. So this is a problem that's common. We've seen it before. One of the theories is that in an effort to make the pins not bend, because of course if a pin is made from soft metal and it bends, you will have another problem there where you can't pull the reserve handle because the pin is bent and the loop doesn't slide on the pin. There, yes, you have a problem there. So the manufacturers started to make the pins a harder and harder material, and these hard metals actually dig into the stainless steel of the grommet, just from the way it gets scored, because it's not a scoring where if you slide it against the stainless steel of the grommet, the scores will break, let's say, or they will bend out of the way. The scores are hard, so they will dig into the grommet and cause a very hard pull, excess of 60 pounds that I've seen. So when you take your reserve for a repack, it doesn't cost anything. The rigger is going to have to open your container anyways, so just ask them, hey man, can I be the one to pull the cutaway and pull the reserve handle? That way you'll even be surprised at how much force is required in a positive or negative way, and also and how shitty you're doing your your emergency procedures. So some people cutting away and opening the reserve straight forwards, so it's like a 90-degree bend on the cable, and not down as it should be. And if your rigger lets you watch, it's rare that they'll let you watch. I know I wouldn't like people watching, but people watch anyways. You can always learn a little bit of how the packing a parachute works. So proper ram air orientation pack job, where you're compressing everything like an accordion and then doing reduction folds and putting it on the free bag. You learn a lot, because that's basically what we do when you do a quick pro pack just to pack our parachute, versus a slow proper ram air orientation type of pack job. You always gain from watching the rigger do something, and it can give you little tips like that come through their mind as they're packing, like, oh, here you should take care of blah, blah, blah. It's very nice to learn. I know I did it when I was younger, and I learned a lot. Number 4, practice your emergency procedures. Don't become complacent. This ties in closely to the one on the top. If you're jumping an untested rig, you can ask a rigger to perform a cutaway and reserve opening test, where you put a staging pin on your reserve loop, and you can practice your emergency procedures at least once, if you haven't ever practiced them on your rig. But of course, you're not going to be daily practicing peeling the Velcros and cutting away, because 1, you're going to be destroying your gear, always peeling and punching, and 2, you're going to be destroying your reserve very soon if you're constantly opening. It just doesn't make sense. But practicing them, imagining scenarios, thinking about what will I do if this happens. If you already thought about it, it's one less thing you're going to have to do in the case of an emergency. Like, you think, okay, I have learned my emergencies in my AFF. That's true. But I'm not jumping with a Navigator 260 anymore. I'm not jumping with a metal D handle anymore. I'm not jumping with a big ass canopy that doesn't really give me bad line twists anymore. Maybe spreading the risers and kicking your line twists out is not such a good solution when you're jumping a 120. Maybe you should rethink how you solve and prepare for your emergency procedures and emergency situations in general. Think about different things and practice, simulate, and visualize what can happen, because it's going to be one last thing in your mind if you do have an emergency. Again, guys, remember, becoming complacent, if you don't know what it means, look it up. It's probably one of the biggest causes of death in skydiving at the moment is complacency. Number 6, one new thing at a time in each skydive. This applies from the moment you start jumping, level 1 AFF, to your first step into a podium. It doesn't matter how much experience you have, adding one thing at a time is the way to learn in skydiving, okay? You know, everybody knows the phrase, you gotta get out of your comfort zone if you want to progress. This is applicable for every other sport except like skydiving and base jumping, where once you start stepping out of your comfort zone too much, you're gonna probably die. So we have our comfort zone, our circle of what we're prepared and ready to do, and we should take half a step each time. So what's half a step? Is just 1 foot out, learn that, then put another foot out, learn that, another foot out, learn that, and just walk and expand your circle of knowledge and your circle of capabilities slowly, one thing at a time. Are you changing how aggressive you snap on your turn? Well, change that when you don't change anything else. Are you changing the size of your canopy? Well, when you do change the size of your canopy, don't change anything else with regards to what you're doing. I'm talking everything. The way you open, the way you do exit, the way you do a hop and bop, anything. I'm telling you, if you're jumping something new, do not change more than one thing at a time. Example, I was going to do my first jump on a Sophia, which is a high performance canopy based on the Petra, very close to the Petra, very similar but a little different. I didn't know how the openings were going to happen. I didn't do my normal backflip for opening. I love to do a backflip when I want to open high, because it's in my opinion the fastest way to be hanging under a parachute when you're doing hop and pops. And I didn't even do that because I was scared my shoulders could have been crooked and fucking up my opening. So one thing at a time, never change more than one thing in the same jump. I also seen personally a few crashes, specifically on swooping, because it's what I'm coaching the most, because of changing multiple things, multiple turn factors in one jump. Number 6, flare all the way. How is this a hack? This shouldn't be a hack. This shouldn't be an advice. This shouldn't be anything. But guys, if you already flare all the way, look around you on the landing area when people are flaring, especially if you're more experienced. There will be a lot of people landing after you because you supposedly have a small parachute. Look at most people jumping, I would say at 150 up, you will see they're not finishing the flare. If it's below a 150, like 135, 120, 100, people start to finish their flares. You will only see them not finishing the flare, especially on windy days. But they will finish the flare because if they don't, they're getting hurt, and they will eventually either learn to do it good or upsize. But it's very, very common for people not to finish flares, especially when jumping bigger canopies, especially on windy days. And yes, on windy days, it's more forgiving, but you're going to build wrong muscle memory, and your brain is going to be used to flaring at a higher and higher point on your body. So your brain is going to be like, okay, yeah, I'm flaring to about my hips, and I landed fine. Next time you're also flaring on your hips, and it's a zero wind day, you're probably not going to have a good time. Flare all the way. If you're flaring, if you're like, oh, but my lines are too short, and if I flare all the way, I'll collapse my canopy. Maybe change your lines, because maybe they're spectral lines, plastic lines that shrunk. But if you're flying a normal canopy with normal sized steering lines, then you're not finishing your flare, something's up. And if everyone around you finishes their flare, maybe you're not. You're the one not finishing their flare. But yeah, finish your flare. Great hack. Shouldn't be a hack, but it is. Number 7, use your B license canopy course sheet every time you get a new canopy. Great advice I give to all my canopy students after they finish their USPA or national FAI license canopy course for B license. We also have for C license here in Europe, but the B license one is more common, so I'm just going to mention that one. There's 5 jumps there, and your instructor will sign them off. Nowadays it's on the computer, so I guess you can find on the computer a little the image on the USPA website on your account, and you can print screen it, just so you know what you have to do. And every single time you get a new canopy, doesn't need to be the first 5 jumps that you do on it. I think it shouldn't be the first 5 jumps you do on it, but it can be. You should do those 5 jumps from the B license course in every single time you get a new canopy. Even if it's the same brand, same size, everything is the same, just a different canopy that because you had to change, maybe yours got destroyed or just too old. Always do those 5 jumps. They don't need to do them 5 consecutive. You can do like one jump just to have fun and then do those 5 like hop and pops, because there's very, very important exercises there on that sheet, especially if you've done a canopy course and the instructor was based on that sheet. You already know all the verbal advice that is given for each jump, so it will be much easier for you to know exactly what to look for. You're going to be stalling your canopy in rears, stalling your canopy on toggles. You're going to be controlling your canopy on half brakes, quarter brakes, 3/4 brakes. You're going to be doing a whole sort of low turn recovery, toggle fire simulations. Everything that is in those papers is beneficial for when you're with a new canopy, and even when you change a line set, provided that your canopy actually benefits from a line set change in terms of trim, because most canopies these days are equipped with lines that don't shrink, they don't change size. So even if you change your lines, it's still going to be the same, but you can still do it. You're not going to lose anything from doing it, but it's very important. I know I do it. I don't do it on every time I change a canopy. I actually do it every once in a while, just because I jump a lot. I do a lot of jumps. I work in this sport. So I like to once every month to spice things up a little bit. And sometimes I do it on my bigger canopies. Sometimes I do it on my smaller canopies. And if you work in the sport, actually some of the jumps where the approaches have to be on half brakes and everything, you'll do it once in a while just because you were dropped poorly. The long spot jump that you have to do on the B license course, you'll just naturally do it once in a while because you're dropped far. But this is us. We work in a sport and we're much more exposed to the actual mistakes you're training from. So we're training, us instructors, we're training because the mistakes actually happen and not because we're simulating what can happen. Similar to the emergency jump you do when you're getting your A license. Most people do it in case it happens. And if you're working in the sport for many, many years, maybe you've actually had to do it. So in this case, the long spot, I don't need to simulate a long spot because I'm dropped long sometimes, so I just do it then. Number 8, invest in an audible and digital visual altimeter. Now, I am a complete victim of skydiving fashion. I love to have a lot of gear, and not just skydiving, in every sport that I do. I always love to have gear and understand my gear and get new gear. And luckily in skydiving, I get the gear just sent to my doorstep and I just try it out, and I actually have a little bit too much gear, in my opinion, too many canopies, too many wingsuits, too many containers. But for the price that they cost me, they are awesome, and I'm fortunate enough, and I thank every one of you guys for the support that you guys give me, and in consequence, the way I have access to all of these nice things. But in reality, gear is really, there's not much to it. You know, a lot of people ask me about containers, to do a container tier list from worst to best. I can't really do that because a container is not like a canopy, where a canopy can be objectively better because it's just designed better. Containers, you know, as long as the parachute gets out of the container from the reserve and the main container, which legally it has to because they have to undergo strict requirements. What else can I say about a container? And I don't want to say bad things about any brand because it just doesn't make sense to me. I wouldn't go out of my way to say bad things about Mirage, about a Velocity container. I wouldn't say any bad things about a Vector just because I'm with Sunpath. I wouldn't say any bad things about Sunpath if I ever get with another company. I've worked for many years with Avalon and I love their rigs. And I've never had any rig show up, luckily. I know if this has happened, but I've never had any rig from a proper manufacturer show up where it's legitimately bad build quality, or in the sense that it's going to look ugly from the stitching being shit or whatever. And I've also never found any dangerous, okay, yes, we have found some things which I'm not going to mention, but rule of thumb is a good manufacturer and a good rigger assembling, and you're not going to have any troubles. And there might be some extras that are better in some containers than other containers, but when all is said and done, most manufacturers have most features. Like, I can't think of any manufacturer that exclusively has a feature that you're like, okay, no, I have to go with them because, you know, they have an amazing feature. The two things that come to mind is Sunpath making a wingsuit specific rig, which is awesome for wingsuiting, obviously because it's wingsuit specific, and UPT making the Mutant, which is canopy piloting specific, so it's good for canopy piloting. But now, if we're talking about normal rigs for normal skydiving, is it really going to be much better because brand X has black hardware and the other brand doesn't? Is it really going to make a difference? Honestly, nah, not really. And the only thing that comes to mind when I think about an actual incredibly better feature would be the Sunpath back pad, because they sent me a prototype and I loved it. I want it on all my rigs now because it's comfortable and fresh at the same time. And if you put a lot of material and a lot of padding, it's going to be comfortable, but it's going to be hot. If you put not a lot of material to cushion the container, it's still going to be relatively comfortable, but it's going to be fresh. Sunpath found like a kind of a midterm, and I love that on my Javelin. So with most things, whether it's helmets, suits, they serve a purpose, and they do that purpose. They do it. So how can I say it's horrible? I can't. I can just say it's good, and it does what it does. And most gear you can kind of ignore it, and you're like, yeah, whatever. But altimeters, there's the analog altimeters that you rent, and then there's visual and audible altimeters. And a rental rig will be marginally worse than your own rig, like it'll be a little bit worse, but a visual analog altimeter will be much worse than a digital altimeter. Digital altimeter is going to give you an exact measurement. You're not going to have to. It's not going to have a lot of error, and it's exact. There's not much to it. It's just it's precise. You know exactly how high you are, and audible altimeter. It's like, of course, it helps tremendously. You're not going to be distracted thinking about the height. You're not going to have to be stopping every 10 seconds to look at the altimeter to see if you're too low. You're just going to have fun and enjoy your skydive because you have a audible altimeter to save you. Should you have two audible altimeters in case one fails? Sure, yes. Go and spend money in Larsen altimeters because they are a good sponsor. I love them so much. So go and spend money and buy two. In reality, I mean, is it going to fail? Yeah, sure, it can fail. But if they do fail, like if they're out of battery, they start ringing obnoxiously loud. So they will warn you if they're close to being out of battery. So yeah, there's that. Wash your skydiving gear, helmet liners. Number 9, wash your skydiving gear. Yes, your skydiving gear requires washing. I know you mountain bikers, for instance, just hose down your mountain bikes. I know because I've done it before, and it's fine. And we mountain bikers wash them, like detail them every once in a while if we're super into them. I know you skiers never clean your skis for sure, and I know you snowboarders never clean the snowboard for sure. But skydiving, you can clean your shit. You can clean your jerseys. Yes, your jerseys, they smell horribly after a few hours of using them. Not a few days, I say a few hours. I know I'm a victim of smelling horribly, especially in competitions where I don't really have a way to wash my clothes and dry them fast. And some jersey materials do pick up smells very fast, especially in the summer. But you can wash them. Yes, there's washing machines. You put them in and they magically come out clean. So wash your stuff. Wash your jerseys. Wash your suits. Can you wash a container? Yes, you can. Should you specifically wash a container? No, ask your rigger. They'll do it. I've washed containers like slowly with a little bit of water after they've been wet on the pond. A little bit of pond water and some shampoo from the head, because if it's good for your head, it's not going to damage your container, is my thought. And just lightly brush it slowly, trying not to completely soak it in the shampoo. And I've had my rigs look good. They're going to have to be unpacked anyways. So wash, and I'm not even talking about containers. Like your rigger wash your container. I don't want to speak about it anymore. Wash your suit, wash your stuff, put it in the washing machine. The cold setting, like 30 to 40 degrees, so that the color doesn't get pulled out of the printed materials if they're printed. And wash your stuff. You smell bad. Also, your helmet, you can remove the liner and wash it. Yes, you can. And you're gonna stop smelling bad. Maybe that's why the girls aren't talking to you. And finally, number 10, double stow. double stow. This is skydiving and base jumping. Advice. Always double stow. Your tailgate, double stow. The locking stow on your rig, double stow. On your container, double stow. And a second, like a subsidiary of this hack, is when you're stowing your lines on your bag, on your deployment bag, the size of the stow should be just big enough for the lines not to get pulled through the grommet. I like to do them maybe 20% bigger than their thickness. So let's say you pick up a stow and the stow is 1 inch thick, maybe 1 inch plus, plus maybe 1.25 inch of stow. Yes, I know some people like to say, oh, 4 fingers, 3 fingers, whatever. Put the 3 fingers up your ass, is what I like to tell them back. Always double stow, because you're gonna have even line removal. Remember, if you don't double stow, the lines touching the grommet will be sliding on the smooth grommet and be pulled super easy, while the lines surrounded by elastic are going to be having a lot more drag, so they're going to have a lot more force to be pulled out. This can give you out of sequence deployment, and I've seen some crazy high-speed malfunctions because of this, like locked bags, because of uneven out of sequence deployment. Same thing for base jumping. Double stow your tailgate. Not too much, and if you use tape, whatever, I don't care. But double stow the little elastic on the tailgate for it to give you nice openings. Of course, it's going to depend on the delay you're doing on slider down. But on the locking stow, I've seen some people do only one stow on the locking stow. Always double stow on that, regardless of the delay you're doing, regardless of the type of jump you're doing, for you to have a nice on-sequence deployment, because an on-sequence deployment, both on skydiving and base jumping, can have very ugly outcomes. So this has been it, guys. I'm sorry. I know that people love short, tiny little videos for our terribly destroyed TikTok, Reels, whatever minds that only want short-form content, but I don't do that so well. I like to do long videos, and maybe I will turn these hacks into 10 different shitty TikToks, even though I don't have TikTok, and I will post them. So follow me on my non-existent TikTok, follow me on my existing Instagram, follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on Tumblr, follow me on everywhere, and I'll see you guys. Oh, and if you have any questions or complimentary information, you can add them in the comment section down below. And as always, I will see you guys next time for part 2, which is already written. So see you next time.